Hello Galactic family. Hello my children and fellow vibrational walk. I am here to explain to you what will be done at our meeting in April 21st, 22nd, 23-2017 about the vibrational convergence of the supradimensional bodies to realize the unification of the frequencies beyond the Earth orbit, inserting the other parallel realities in this process of convergence. In practice, a unified flow will be established between the different energy strands of the soul fractions deployed from the I Am to all biological realities in the incarnational process. The structure of the human biological body within the energetic context of the terrestrial biosphere has 33 frequencies and vibrational structures which are mistakenly called bodies, or 32 bodies, for lack of a better understanding of their functioning at the higher dimensions of the energetic structure of beings alive. For each soul fractal or even spirit direct fractal, there is a lineage and variety of structures that humans would understand as bodies, but in fact they are equivalent to routines of a program between software and hardware for a computer and its programs to function properly, if we use the classification taught in the Melchizedek method. Besides the 32 bodies, there are other lineages. 32 bodies, Earth and its electromagnetic field frequency barrier 3D 8D 72 bodies, systemic comprehension with other soul fracs 7D 13D, 144 bodies, galactic range with other soul fracs 13D 20D, 288 bodies, Neshe scope with spirit I Am fractions 15D 22D, 360 bodies, spanning nebula and multi-galactic I Am monad 22D 35D, 432 bodies, unification of the spirit I Am with the monads 28D 38D, 720 bodies, supramonad irradiation with universal orbit 30D 66D, 3600 bodies, irradiation Havana Shantar supramonad with source 50D 144D. This is an approximate relationship so that you understand that as your consciousness connects to the higher spheres of your own essence, new frequencies or bodies as you say connect to establish the higher connections to the realities of soul spirit and with that of the multiverse that exists beyond the baryonic matter that is the physical and biological reality, happening to vibrate and to experience the energy in the dark matter and later in the dark energy. And after that, directly in the antimatter itself, entering into the morontial energy where there really is the so-called source that is all and from it comes to other places still beyond the very universe that was generated from the critical point of that energy called by you from God. I repeat that this description of bodies is wrong, for there are no such bodies, but routines of a program in cyberspace, or rather, soul frequency which represents the whole invisible plane of the spirit unfolded in Alma and both to the levels of stabilization of your biological reality. The flow of energy is then received and distributed as the vitality of the monadic plane radiating sustainability to the I Am and nurturing the soul spirit which in turn radiates the energy that keeps the incarnational biological structure alive below 9D. When you reached the quadrant of Neshe and its 49 galaxies, most of you were on the existential plane beyond 12D in the consciousness orbit of your I Am establishing the projects that would be needed before Neshe and the various paradise philosophers who were involved in the projects of the existential duality below 7D to co-create the genomes that would be put to the test for the next 8-12 billion years of terrestrial counting. However, the structure depended not only on each of you but on a multifactorial context of billions of other beings beyond the interests of Micah and the other commanders with whom you were working long before you reached this timeline in the Neshe. Yes, You are all time travelers who have jumped enormous distances of time and space to be able to be living on Earth and the other worlds that are related to the Earth right now. Many of you are from the relative future of terrestrial actuality in other parallel universes, and others are from a past that has already been annihilated by the very merging of galaxies and entire universes, thereby generating quantum leaps where your monads have projected themselves through the infinity of universes to establish a new co-creation program with the proposals of Micah, Emmanuelis, Metratron, Metrum, Strier, Alia, Amaryllis, Anhuduk and many other consciousness beings beyond 35D reality that interact with their monad and generating the IAM action programs. It was my job to establish these routines of unfolding you between the levels of 22D 35D and establish below the quadrants and existential realities so that your energy pattern was stabilized between 9D to 14D and thus gradually start the biological process below of 8D to initiate the biological realities of Neshe and its 49 adjacent galaxies and clusters. All this diversity and flow of energies or frequencies radiated from the highest plane to each biological body and its fractals will be unified, identified and will undergo a process of convergence and unification in the event that will be realized by the channel Rodrigo Romo and his spiritual teams of the Supra Confederation, thus establishing a new guideline for ascension and unification with its other realities under conditions of ascension and unification beyond the cryogenic body and to establish the goals for the particles still retained in the threshold, clones and kayambas that are attached to their standard of consciousness and metabolism. Vibrational evaluation of their terrestrial and galactic process will be performed to establish the connections pertinent to their most lucid bodies, and with that, the connection and transmission of energy and knowledge for activation of the higher mental astral body. Adjustments will be made that will determine important internal changes to classify you into the process of terrestrial selection and evasion by placing the actual incarnational biological reality as possibly the last temporal stage. The factors that most complicate the incarnational process are, in fact, the holographic incarnations of guilt, fear, and consequently of terrestrial imprisonment. The concept of karma and the obligation of the reincarnational process on Earth presupposes paying for this karma, which is often holographic, generated by past lives contracts through religions and ritualistic dogmas with the Anunnakis, Greys, Zetas, Reptilians, and other cultures who visited and lived with the various humanities well before the last flood that occurred some 12,000 years ago, generating the process of incarceration imprisonment to supply their technological and energetic needs through humanity and its civilizations for at least 150,000 years of its time. The Earth has repeated the Orion cycle and copied through you many of the events occurring in the colonies of the 108 federations, repeating the cycles of duality that are information inserted in the cellular memory of the soul and not just in the biological body. Thus in the physical incarnational process you have ended up repeating situations and actions of the relative past that were impregnated not only with the genome and biological inheritance of your various parents but also with the soul and the subtle higher bodies that generate the connection between you and the other planets where you have incarnated and are still incarnated. And the threads of consciousness still emit or transmit these impulses from memory. The multiplicity of each one of you is really greater than you can understand, for you are part of something much greater. Imagine a pizza that was divided into 144 pieces, this pizza being the soul spirit, and each of these 144 pieces are you in different biological bodies, planets, time and space, without knowing each other. In the event that will be accomplished we will work on the condition of creating a path, a cordon of unification not only of these 144 pieces, but of all the others beyond that frequency directly with the monad and other structures, to generate the return to KESHE. I have been close to you since your arrival at the NESARA assembly at the beginning, and then I have unfolded you to the different colonial realities and in the federations like Nodia, GESARA, PLEIADES, Sirius, Arcturus, Shamballa, Antares, Deneb, Procyon, Pollux, Aldebaran, Canopus, Chapel, Tau Ceti, Ptolemy, Vega Aviar, Argus, Alchoni, Mintaka, Rigel, Re, Arm, Algol, Elnath, Agena, Omega Centaur, Creator, Eta Carina, Aspidisci, Aviar Canopus, Placidus, Beaver, Beta Sirius, Adara, Wezen Sirius, Betelgeuse, Bellatrix, Mysa, Hercules M-13, Altera Aquila, Formalhaut, Corona Borealis, Nunci, Spica, Dorado, Cretus, Draco Tuban, Pegasus, Cassiopeia, hundreds of planets and empires in which you were part of the ancient schools of ascension and reconnection of consciousness between biological matter and the soul. These are some of the most outstanding lines of existence of colonies and stellar empires between 3D and 6D that have shaped stellar navigation routes where Terra is included as a routine route of locomotion between this flow of stars and their various planets, fueling the technology of these cultures and races of mineral and natural resources that they needed and still needed. The incarnational process is directly related to the trajectories of expansion and colonization from the oldest to the most recent peoples in the process of growth and unfoldment of new dwellings that were being developed through the evolution and emergence of new colonies created by the different galactic powers of the Milky Way, as well as the other galaxies of the NESARA group. The 37 worlds of exile that are so much discussed are in fact a natural consequence of the social and population growth of most of the dense planets between 3D and 5D that have ended up expelling all those who did not fit the new rules or social guidelines, creating a social and technological garbage that eventually generated more primordial incarnational unfoldings and with a greater gradient of duality, as is the case of Earth and other similar planets. Due to the indiscriminate use of technology and the hidden presence of AI, most of these societies ended up becoming slave and totally dependent on the technology inserted in their bodies, and with that the soul spirit ended up being neglected in a significant way, damaging the and replaces it with holograms of limited physical vegetation, as is the case with modern humanity. The Earth is precisely one of those worlds where the holograms of entrapment are constantly activated by the network of TV and stream of waves of Wi-Fi and equivalents, keeping their holograms active, and with that, the impossibility of ascension and reconnection with the superior plane of yourselves. That is why mankind has widened its denial to the true spiritual plane, which includes the question of life on other worlds and hidden and false religions that promise salvation that will never come, for it can only be real when tuned by its heart and its attitudes, for the universe works through what you issue and what you receive. This is called action and reaction. How can there be salvation for those who emit disharmony already in their thoughts and have conflicting attitudes? When you trained in the spheres of the higher dimensions before you began your journey in biological matter, your perception gradient was very broad, including the perception of your I am and the set of energies that surround you. But as they moved on to materiality, most ended up being imprisoned by the holograms of the different control matrices of each society that you were helping to establish a more harmonious level of life and manifestation. I myself have unfolded myself to the material realities to sustain the Hermetic schools to generate the opportunity of ascension and redemption of the conscience of you as it was possible, what was a success in some places and a failure in others, due to the games of interest of the duality established in each planetary reality, generating convergence to the different realities of the Earth and other related worlds within and outside that navigation route mentioned above. For this and other circumstances, during the 3 days of the International Meeting on Quantum Healing 21, 22, 23 April 2017, important adjustments and connections will be made for each participant, establishing a new structure of this neural network and what we can define as technology of soul spirit, and thus co-create from the upper stream a line of reconnection with the flow of the physical body, paraspirit and lower astral body, generating an alignment and overlap with the other adjacent fractals and planes of consciousness not only on Earth but in the entire incarnational history of this incarnational route over the past 12 billion Earth years. Each of you in the terrestrial reality has what is defined as the line of ancestry, which are entities of the astral plane related to their previous incarnations, which can be called guardian angels, or Axis and other definitions according to the religious line that is used. This ancestral lineage is associated with the incarnational flow of each one of you in the holograms, karma, dharma and all that is related to being on Earth and the mission that each one has to face. But these ancestors are also imprisoned in their personal holograms of their own time and incarnational line. On average, each person carries directly and indirectly about 28-32 entities in the line of ancestry that end up being trained within the different levels and frequencies of the anchoramento of the CQE being tuned by the order Sena Esmeralda. When these entities are attuned to the higher spiritual teams you have defined as crown, throne, and ascended masters, each goes through a process of cleansing and removing their own holograms and karmic charge tied up, and in time they come to help each one of you like true guardian angels. And instead of charging, they help clean up contracts and remove the stones from the path as your conscience allows you to use the anchor daily and aware of its existence. I have acted alongside this connection between students of physicality and the anchorage to establish within you a new awareness and awareness of the plane of spirituality and the personal process of holographic liberation from Earth and the past concerning the galactic Earth context that's around thousands of years of history and extremely complicated connections in the temporal flow of some 5 billion years of its time. The relationship between each of you with your own line of ancestry is directly related to the fact that you are still imprisoned on Earth, in your network of holograms, and to the control matrix itself, as they say, generating even more holograms of imprisonment and redemptions to be realized, many of which in fact will never be realized, for they never existed. There have always been holographic lies of imprisonment in the Earth's electromagnetic field because of the contracts with the aliens that have placed you on the planet since the beginning of your journey on Earth, according to the processes involved in the Federations and the Great War of Orion that bears much resemblance to Star Wars saga. Many of your dreams and the pursuit of accomplishments have become an astral reality in the incarnational process, thus initiating the hologram game you created yourself, without realizing the imprisonment it has generated. Again I insist, like my brother Rodrigo Romo, that we are not talking about guilt or guilty, but rather a cumulative effect of errors and emotional issues that ended up generating greater effects of the holographic process, and with that, suffering and imprisonment for some and dominion and power to others, but all trapped in the material structure of biological bodies and moving away from the gradient of their soul spirit, moving away from their true origin. The point is that when a soul spirit remains beyond the time needed in the baryonic materiality, it ends up stagnating the process of growth in the other spheres of the I Am itself and the Am-Ada, generating blockages in the flow to the other higher dimensions where there is the interconnection between all the fractals. I will address a delicate and very controversial subject between the Paradise Sons themselves and the members of the Lananadic order, which is precisely the physical reality of barium matter, which is a relatively new experiment in the universe, for before this atomic structure exists, the universe and the itself was composed of antimatter and moruntial energy and beyond, where there was only the energy form of the consciousness of uncreated beings in their own creations and manifestations far beyond the very structure of soul spirit, being the I am, the element of energy. The densest matter of the universe, where there was the experiment of subtle co-creation on the high astral plane, to simplify for you. When the collapse of energy and the antimatter itself occurred in the spheres beyond the electromagnetic field of Havana-Chandra, it ended up forming a new proposal and polarity of particles that were slowing its speed. Consequently, energy and mass were creating what you understand as baryonic materiality and its universe. The velocity of light has never been constant as terrestrial physicists believe because it depends on the density of the medium in which it propagates, which gradually changes according to the energy and electromagnetic field of each sector of the universe or outer space between the clusters of galaxies or clusters as their scientists define. When this matter was formatted and stabilized, the older members of the colonizing and exploiting castes of the moruntial universe created the Lananadic order to give the existential impulse and became the first executors of the projects of the cosmic engineers who are the Vornandic, who already had this before forming the Havana-Chandra assembly. Thus these masters of creation eventually occupied most of the cosmic references of the multiverse to the condition of creating gods, for indeed they are the earliest, even before the arrival of the Paradise Sons and other hierarchical structures of the material multiverse, directives of the cosmic laws, referenced in the studies that Rodrigo Romo presents as the superluminaeus or higher thrones, which are the foundation of the whole material universe where the incarnational process was generated for the arrival of the unfolding of the Paradise Sons. Yes, my sons and brothers, in the line of true hierarchies, the Paradise Sons came long after the thunders in the universe of materiality, for they represented the evolution of Amadas and supra-Amadas that had evolved from other planes of existence of the multiverse before, during and after the formation of the structure of the 144 superuniverses and their thousands of possibilities defined as multiverse, crossing the temporal line of the universe to experience creation and possibilities in physicality. In this way these Paradise Sons and many other classifications of energy ended up entering the incarnational process of biological matter and having the condition of this type of experience. The incarnational process started from the higher frequencies to the denser ones, that is, it was actually initiated between 7D and 9D, then densified to 5D and 6D and eventually reached the 4D sphere, being the basis for establishing the parameters of the most dense biological experiment that you understand by 3D. After many billions of years, an external factor was added to the materiality which is the moruntial factor where the mica personal project enters and its personal orders unfolded in the cosmic process between 9D and 7D initially, which with the Vega Aviar project was inserted for 5D and about 7 million moruntial Nebulan planets inserted in the 3D and 4D proposal, and in the Milky Way there are about 400 planets similar to Terra in this question. After the Vega star system that was inserted into Nishi, hundreds of other complementary and parallel projects were carried out by the commanders of the Lananadic order and the powerful federation who established high levels of power and consciousness, preferring to keep their empires in physicality and not return to your spiritual cosmic origin. In this way, the material experiment ended up out of control and the original program, for thousands of paradisiacal intronatosons chose to stay in control of physicality and no longer return to the morontial origin from which they originated, creating pyramidal structures of control of the material universe and the multiverse, as needed. Again, in this cosmic game of chess there is no good, no evil, no guilt, for remaining in the flow of material existence has a time limited to atomic stability to support barium physics, but when that is over, everyone will return in one form or another to its origin. The point is not this, but the fact that you are imprisoned in the holograms of physicality without knowing the truth. To establish true knowledge and the so-called master, it is imperative that you understand and know the truth of the game so that you can make your decisions based on real and non-holographic bases, based on the fear and guilt that was fabricated in your psyche on the worlds of exile and on hundreds of planets of the 108 federations and the other power groups. Thus the question of the multidimensionality of soul spirit is much more comprehensive and complex than is imagined by human perception, which is still based on the Cartesian linear structure of time and space, believing that the incarnational process has the same structure. A great deception, in fact, for all of you are temporal travelers with regard to biological incarnational displacement. The cosmic structure of consciousness is interconnected to the morontial network of the universe beyond the sphere of 15D, and only those who achieve this connection will be able to enjoy it and establish a more balanced incarnational biological line outside the manipulations of the power play of those who have been imprisoned in the sphere of 5D to 6D coordinating federations and power groups on holographic polarity. When you understand and learn to feel this process, your connection will allow the other bodies that we have already discussed to make similar connections to the axon network of the neurological system of the brain, and with this the bodies or frequencies of the soul spirit will connect, and realizing the transfer of information that activates the biochemical modulations of the material and astral bodies, thus generating an alignment of the coding flow directly from the monadic module of each one of you, creating the natural connection to the neural network of all the soul fracts that fit the highest standard of your I am, and with all the cosmic network that this represents. Independently, whether or not you wish to have more experiences in physicality below 9D, will be more balanced and harmonic biological processes in tune with your soul spirit and I am, generating the sharing of information for all members of this neural spiritual network cosmic. My particle named Yabaran was present in many developments and helped the LAN and Adectronatos teams in the mechanisms of coupling and the physicality of millions of consciousnesses who wanted to realize the biological process that would be initiated and experienced in a unique way by the candidates who were getting ready in the project of the matter. The multiverse has the capacity for projects and realities unlimited by human perception, but its time is limited to the existence of energy to keep matter stable in its atomic unfoldings and sublevels that stimulate diverse realities from rocks to the plane of biological realities. In this meeting we will be present with all of you, assisting in the procedures that the Masters of the White Brotherhood and the other structures, such as the Order of Saint Esmeralda, the Order of Michelangelo, the Temporary Order, the Amaryllis Order and many others will be carrying out, to collaborate in the set of information and energies of the greater plane for each present in the physical plane and in the astral plane. I myself will be in this function next to the different frequencies between the physicality and the diverse lines of the astral, to establish a new level of functions in the astral plane and activation of their superior bodies. Most of the commanders of the 108 federations, the commanders of the Supra-Confederation, masters of various organizations, Crystal Summit, the Anchorage, their ancestry line, masters of Rwanda and the intraterrestrial and interoceanic plan to establish future projects with each one of the present and thus a new cycle in the life of each one, to establish the transmigration of consciousness and energy between the moral body and the lower bodies up to the physical plane. Well, my children and friends of the journey, each of you will express positive changes and many breaches of past contracts that will gradually establish themselves positively in your physical earthly walk and in the planes of the astral, where these contracts keep you imprisoned in the holographic flow of the earth, generating the end of the biological process in a harmonic way, without guilt, fear and collections of the past. The effect of what will be realized will not be noticed by all at once, but in the astral plane it will be much faster due to the breach of contracts with the Anunnaki and other extraterrestrial commanders, for a star council will be held next to this event in parallel planes between 4D until 8D, establishing new parameters and breaking contracts for all parties involved, generating the liberation movement and thus, fundamental changes in their functions and attributions in the astral plane will be present and real immediately. The Shamuna Council will send its representatives on the high astral plane to adjust this issue of contracts and holograms to establish a new line to be defined for each of the participants in the physical and astral plane. We can define that this event will be like a council of negotiation between the different commanders and factions with the major masters to resolve the issues that are still pending arising from the holograms and lies of the past and of the terrestrial colonization and the federations with which you yourselves became involved in the course of its incarnational biological stellar line. Thus, the line of ancestry of each will be present to receive a stellar and terrestrial pardon and to leave the holographic flow in their consciences and with this, to leave the terrestrial imprisonment in the barrier of frequency that is directly inserted in that holographic vibration that is codified by the implants that you have in the biological structure of your body for thousands of years. The energy and pulse that is emitted by the frequency barrier is connected up to a frequency of 5D and a bit more, encoded in the human bloodstream and the astral plane, through micro-implants or, as you define it, of nanotechnology that establishes the pulse of imprisoning even the lower astral body in this neural net that stimulates the holograms and prevents you from leaving Earth. All quarantine worlds have one equivalent to this earth barrier to prevent souls and clones from leaving and rebelling against the control system that was created by the federations and their political interests millions of years ago. Many subjects will be worked out and ascertained by the Shamuna Council and the members of the Supra Confederation to establish a new route for each present at all frequencies beyond the human concept of good and evil, putting an end to many holograms to initiate a new day of convergence, of unification and harmonization for all those involved and present at this meeting of April 2017. A new phase will be established for each one of you and your ancestral land lineage and also for the lineage of stellar ancestry together with the federations and other groups of power linked to the realities of its cryogenic body and soul spirit unfolding and its branching of fractals. So for each will be key moments that will redefine your walk and planetary and stellar issues, which will be mediated by Vorn and exterior directly with the teams that are under their sovereignty and members of the Mikhailika order, adjusting much that has already been promised and it has never been fulfilled by the holograms present in your mental and emotional perception. I will be there to support and adjust what is my function, to have accompanied many of you on your biological journey. At this stage of the earth I will be supporting in the Hermetic schools the assignments of liberation and reconnection of each of you through the flow of energy of your threefold flame, which will be recoded by the renovating vibrational processes that will be made available by the larger teams during the 3 days of the event, 7 days before and 21 days after, thus generating a moment of temporal inflection to establish the goals in the astral and physical plane for each one of you in your line of ancestry, creating a new focus for each one that will manifest in the mediumistic and mental process in all the frequencies of the life, being both physical and astral, creating a quantum leap of energy and serving as the basis for future projects and events that will have a similar effect on the unfolding of terrestrial events that humanity will still generate in its paradoxical and linear future according to the choices that will be made in the field international politics and the actions of each of you, controlled by the SGS and the control matrix and its unfolding in the life of each one of you. Well, my beloved ones, I stay here and I accompany you in the spheres of the different dimensions of the astral plane and the etheric schools. I will be in the peace and harmony of your triune flame to establish the new home of each one. I am one with you in the source that all is.